This is the Gutsy Health Podcast with Juanique and Tristan Roney. Hey, you guys. Welcome back to the Gutsy Health Podcast.
Welcome to this episode. It's a fun one for me. We're talking about your blood.
Yep. Blood work, blood analyses, and roadblocks that you come into when it comes to blood work and having your doctor or trying to force your doctor to advocate for you to do more testing. We're going to talk about that as well.
So to be specific here, what we're talking about is what's called a functional blood chemistry analysis, which is really important to differentiate from a conventional blood chemistry analysis, which is what you normally get. But we're going to talk about that, and maybe we can introduce this subject with Juanique's story.
Yeah.
Since you have kind of experienced what we see a lot.
Yes. So my story is your guys' story, or a lot of a lot of people reach out to me and they say, I just don't feel good. And I've gone to my doctor and had blood work done and everything comes back normal, but I know everything is not normal. And so this was my story a year ago. I had so much brain fog. I had what is termed adrenal fatigue, but I didn't know it at the time. And I couldn't think straight. I couldn't get out of bed. I was a zombie, and I'm like, this is not normal. And on top of that, I was experiencing like neurological issues. I have a history of Graves' disease. So I knew, I'm like, hormones are off. This doesn't feel like Graves' disease, but this is like a whole different beast. So in a panic, I went to my primary care and I gave her a list of blood work. And I basically told her, I'm experiencing this and this and this and this and this. And I think I have this and this and this. Please help me figure this out. And so long list of labs that I wanted checked. And she was like, yep, let's do this and this. So about 12 to 14 vials of blood later. And they also checked me for a stomach ulcer. They made me drink this like nasty, sugary stuff. Anyways, I get called back 2 weeks later and everyone's, I mean, it's bittersweet, right? But they say, everything looks perfectly normal. And I'm like, this is not my normal. It's not. And so, but all I said was like, okay, thank you. And then I took all of that blood work. And what did we do?
Well, real quick, I want to talk about that experience for a second because it's one that we hear about all the time. And it's one where you almost can't win. No. When you are having a lot of symptoms of things and you know that things aren't okay, waiting for that call from your doctor with your test results is awful.
Right.
And either you're going to get that call and your doctor's going to say, so bad news, blah, 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 blah. Here's what's wrong, right? And that's awful to hear because then suddenly there's a name for what's going on. And it brings up all these like, well, am I going to die? What's the treatment? You know, it's an anxiety provoking situation. Totally. But if your doctor calls you and says, everything looks normal, then all of a sudden you're stuck in this position of, but I don't feel normal.
And is this all in my head?
And is this all made? And especially if you're a woman, I know we talk about this a lot, but if you're a woman, your symptoms are far more likely to be ignored by the medical establishment. And you're far more likely to get the story of, it's in your head.
Yep. Exactly.
You just need to go see a therapist.
Exactly.
Which is incredibly invalidating and disempowering. Or
women will get just a prescription for like anti-anxiety meds.
Yeah, that happens an awful lot.
This heartbreaking story. Young girl, like 20, 21, experiencing tons of anxiety and depression. And she goes to her doctor and she overhears, she expresses all these symptoms and she overhears the doctor say to the nurse practitioner, oh, it's just another college girl wanting to get all drugged up. And I'm like, oh, wow. That's so sad. Like, that is so sad that our symptoms are not taken seriously. And if you are a young woman, more so. I mean, this is becoming more and more prevalent and hopefully doctors are listening. And I think some are and a lot are not.
And if you are a doctor listening, there's a really good chance you're not the type of doctor that just throws symptoms aside and gaslights the people who come to you. So we're not talking to you. You're awesome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being different.
We have to put that disclaimer there because there are a lot of doctors that have tried to listen to our podcast and hate it because they think all we do is doctor bash. And we're not, you guys, but we're trying to advocate for people like us.
Right. And honestly, we could use as many doctors as we can. So every time we do hear from a doctor who says, but I'm different, we cheer. We're happy about that.
Yeah.
We would love for that to be the case every single time, but it's not. Far too few of the doctors out there do it this way.
But it's important to start creating bridges, right? Absolutely. Starting to heal this pathway. And so we're trying to figure out that happy medium of how are our voices heard, how are our stories heard and respected. Because there are a lot of healthcare professionals out there that really do want to help, but they are just as handcuffed as we are to this broken system.
Yeah.
So anyways,
one more disclaimer.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
We'll get to this, I promise. Okay. But for the men out there, you experience a completely different sort of frustration with the system, which is that you probably aren't engaging the system in the first place. Mm-hmm. So you may not get as much of the invalidation and gaslighting and anti-anxiety prescriptions as the women do, right. But you probably have a whole lot of symptoms that you keep to yourself that you don't share with anyone, even your significant others. Right. And when you do go see a doc, you're far less likely to share everything that's going on. And you're far more likely to walk out of there basically getting nothing and just feeling like that was a waste of your time. Yeah. And so this is for you as well, to know that there are options beyond just what you are typically given in the conventional system, and that there is something you can do to empower yourself. So This is for everybody.
Yes.
All right.
So where were we?
So Juanique,
I got my blood work done.
Got our blood work done.
Called, said nothing's wrong.
Nothing's wrong. And so then we put it through our own system, and we have our own system. We've been doing this for a year now. Mm-hmm. As we've done it more and more, we've learned more and more about this stuff. And we've started to really pick up on a lot of patterns that happen that we want to talk about today. Yeah. But we also just really want to bring this tool to your attention, that there is a way to look at your blood chemistry that can help you optimize your nutrition and your lifestyle and even your stress and all kinds of things in order to get yourself to where you want to be.
Yes.
And this tool has been ignored for far too long because of how it's been used in the conventional system, which was Juanique's experience. So doctors use what's called normal. What are we going to call it? We'll call it a conventional range.
So it's called the normal range.
Well, sure. Normal,
you're within
whatever.
Normal range. Fine. Is what
we'll
say.
Say normal. So they use a normal range, which is basically 95% of the population that they have tested. So if they look at 100 people, the 95 of them are going to fall in this normal range, in which it is considered that there's nothing wrong here. But there are going to be 5 people, 2.5 on each side, right? 2 or 3 on each side, that fall outside of this range, and they are going to be considered clinically relevant, we'll call it. And the doctors will pay attention to it and say, okay, there's something wrong here. Your blood is so different from the normal range that we need to look deeper. Yeah. And this is great if you have a very, very sick individual and you need to figure out what is causing that and try to heal them. This is not so great if you are dealing with an individual who is not feeling great, but is more or less able to function in life, right? Which is where Juanique was. She wasn't completely bedridden.
No.
She wasn't vomiting up
death's door,
blood, anything crazy like that. But she knew that things were not quite right. And because of this situation, she fell within the 95% range on most things. Not everything, actually, but on most things. Mm-hmm. And the doctor said, okay, we don't have anything that's clinically relevant here. You're normal.
Yeah.
So go back to the 95% of the population that is considered normal and deal with your stuff. Right.
Yep.
I guess they did offer you something, right? They offered you an MRI.
Yes, because I was having neurological symptoms, and and so they're like, we could do an MRI on your spine. And I was like, no, thanks. I'll figure this out, because I had a hunch that this was beyond something that they could understand or find.
So once again, they're using a normal range. What we use, the system that we put her blood work through, is looking at what's called a functional range. And the functional range is kind of like comparing yourself to someone who feels really good, has no symptoms, and is considered very, very healthy, right? Excellent health. Because that's where we all want to be. That's what we want for ourselves, is to have excellent health, to feel good, to be able to do whatever it is we want to do, to have lots of energy, be excited about life, right? Yep. So it would make sense that we would compare ourselves to that, not to a population that's just getting by.
Right.
And when we did this with Juanique's blood work, we actually found a lot of things that we could focus on.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about some of the specifics? I mean, we do have your blood work here, but as a brief takeaway for right now, what was it that made the difference for you?
The biggest thing for me was figuring out the adrenal stuff, that I had low sex hormone and I had low DHEA. And so I was not having functional adrenal function, basically. And so that was like a massive game changer. There were other things too, like little things that we could factor in, like the selenium, the zinc, the vitamin D, that kind of stuff. But the biggest, and the nice thing about our system is that it prioritizes things for you. So it does like the most important to like the least important.
Kind of.
And, yeah, if you're curious as to what this looks like, I did an Instagram story on it, and it's saved on my Instagram page, the Gutsy_mom. Look for labs part 1, and you'll see some screenshots of what my labs look like. Now this is like, how many pages is the lab work?
Like 40 something.
It's like 40 pages. I only show you like 4, but you kind of get the gist of it and like the basics. Yeah. The other pages go into all the other things that we tested.
Right. So backing up just a little bit and giving a bit of background. So what tends to happen with a lot of people in our modern society is that we deal with chronic stress, right? We're not getting enough sleep. We work at jobs that put a lot of pressure on us to perform very well all the time. We have these go lifestyles that don't really allow for leisure and just kind of relaxation. So we're either in go mode or we're sleeping. And this taxes our adrenals like crazy.
Yeah.
And that is okay for a while, but eventually our adrenals get tired and they can't do it quite as well. They can't keep up basically with what we're asking of them. And so they poop out. And that's problematic in a lot of ways, but 2 ways in specific is that, for one, it means that we're not able to produce enough cortisol to keep up with the demands of our lives.
To keep up with the stress of our lives.
The stress, thank you. And we're not able to produce enough DHEA, which is an important precursor to a lot of our sex hormones.
So actually what happens more specifically is your adrenals, because you need DHEA, which is the precursor to your sex hormones. But when you're on high stress, your adrenals will hijack the DHEA and turn it into cortisol. So your sex hormone function goes down the toilet. And I was 2 years, Satori was about to turn 2. So it'd been 2 years and I still hadn't had a period. I mean, I was exhausted, like all of these things. And so looking at this blood work, I was like, oh my gosh, that's why, because I have not zero DHA, but I have less than optimal DHEA and tons of cortisol. And so I was like, oh, I just need to do X, Y, and Z. And I did that. And I started feeling like $1 million within like 2 to 4 weeks.
So that's another really cool thing about this functional blood chemistry analysis, is that we can even track kind of the stage of the progression of your conditions. So in Juanique's case, she still had really high cortisol, which meant that her adrenals were still working, but she was in the early stages of what would eventually lead to burnout without major changes.
Exactly.
Where the DHEA was being hijacked to create the cortisol. But over time, what will happen is there isn't even anything left for the cortisol. And so the DHEA tanks, the cortisol tanks. And at that point, you start leaning on your thyroid and
that's bad.
And eventually you're just chronically fatigued, right?
Yep.
So So we were able to kind of catch that pattern
Yeah.
and find out that, oh, we need to do some adrenal support here. We need to do some sex hormone support. And you ended up doing the DHEA.
I did the DHEA.
Right? Which is, not everyone ends up doing that, but it was something that Juanique decided to do in this case. And was it helpful?
Oh my gosh. I was a new person, like I said, in 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And you've heard us talk about DHEA before. You shouldn't be taking it for long periods of time because it can cause a lot of issues. So I did it for about 2 months. And then, anyways, long story short, I'm tons better now.
Yep. So yeah, the thing about DHEA is that your body has a lot of options when it gets a hold of it. So it might do what we expect it to do and produce a little bit more testosterone, a little more sex hormones, or it might do something entirely different.
But our point is that we had really clear-cut answers. We even had answers as to why I was having abdominal pain. It showed gallbladder health there, and I had a partially obstructed gallbladder because of stress again as well. And so it was so beautiful to see, oh my gosh, this is being explained, and I don't have to stress about like worst case scenarios. Because I actually had a CT scan to see what was happening in my abdominal cavity because I was having all of this pain and no one could help me figure it out. And so when we did the blood work and it said most likely partial obstruction of gallbladder, I was like, yes, that's it. And so I took some enzymes to help me unblock that, and it's like I have a new gallbladder.
So we are living in the age of what they call personalized medicine, or so they claim. And I would say that these functional blood chemistry analyses are the most important first step in getting your own personalized approach to your health. They are so amazing because we live in this extremely toxic world, not just in terms of the actual toxins out there, but just the way that the world is set up around us. It puts so much tax on our bodies at all times that we can get worn out in 100 different ways.
Yeah.
And then we have these gurus out there that are saying, oh, the answer is to follow this plan, right? Keto or veganism or whatever reset diet is out there. There's a million of them. And without actually doing any kind of testing, you're just guessing, right? You're hoping that you fall into the right category that matches whatever approach you've taken. And I would say your odds are like 50-50.
Yeah.
Where you might get lucky and, hey, that was the thing you needed. Or more often than not, you're not in the right category. You waste your time, you waste your money, you don't feel any better. And then you become one of the many voices saying, this approach is total garbage.
Right.
Should have just gone to my doctor. Right.
So
the testing is what will make all the difference for you, because it will tell you in which ways your body has been most taxed by your lifestyle. And it will tell you very specifically which pathways you should look down in order to heal yourself and get back to where you really wanted to go. Yeah. Right.
Now, is this an important part where we say we are not doctors, we do not prescribe, we do not diagnose,
we don't take your blood.
No, we do not take your blood.
We don't even order the labs, to be honest.
We can't.
No.
Because we're not doctors.
Exactly.
So most people will give them the list, you hand it to a doctor, and your doctor does the draw for you.
I would say it's about 50-50.
Yeah.
So
that's
about 50% of the time they do that. The other 50% of the time we help you. We help you find someone who can do that for you. And we do have a network that can make that happen.
Right.
Basically. Right. And it's a very simple process. You do have to take the time to go into a lab and get the blood drawn.
Right.
But it's fairly quick, fairly painless.
Yep.
And within a week or two, you've got yourself your personalized approach to what you're going to be doing with your health for the next several months.
Yeah. What I think is really beautiful about what some people do with these labs is they'll go to their doctor about a health issue and get a copy of their labs. And then they'll bring it to us because they want an alternative interpretation of what their labs are going to look like, so that when they go to talk to their doctor about the labs, they have points of references that they can bring up with their doctor. And that's one part that I really love, that how people have utilized this is it's just a really empowering tool. Versus going up and not knowing what to expect when you talk with your doctor. And then your doctor will say a bunch of things that could be confusing and you leave out the door with no answers.
And actually on that note, I have been amazed at how often people come to me with their labs that their doctor ordered. And there are markers that are very clearly out of the normal range, not my functional range that I like to use, but like very extreme. And I say, oh, what did your doctor say about this? And they say, oh, my doctor didn't mention this. They said everything was fine.
Right.
And I look at this and I go, wait, how is this possible? Like, this number is off the charts.
Right. So I have a story for that. That happened to me when we were, when we lived in San Antonio, and I had blood work done. And they called me back like panicked, and they're like, you look like you have Graves' disease again. I'm like, well, I feel like I have Graves' disease. But then they did blood work again, like a month later, things were different. And they're like, oh, it's probably lab error. So I think a lot of times when there is a marker that seems to be out of the ordinary, they will say it's due to some lab error, because normally they like to see clusters of markers out of the range. And so when it's normally just one, it's not enough to tempt them to say anything.
And to be fair, that's not a terrible approach to things, because when you are looking at a whole bunch of different test markers, it's far more likely that one of them is going to be extreme.
Right.
There's even some statistical terminology for that I don't want to get into, but it does increase the odds of a false positive.
Right.
When the doctors chase down something, they're using medication 99% of the time, right?
Right.
You create side effects from those medications. And if you're not 100% confident that you're addressing what you're intending to address, then you could have just made their life worse.
Right.
By doing this, right? So I get it. I get it from a medical perspective. That makes sense to not get too jumpy,
excited, exactly,
when you see these things. From a functional perspective, from what we do, it makes a lot more sense to chase these things, because how are we going to do it?
Right. But here's the thing: is chasing these things takes way more time and energy and money, and so that's the difference.
Well,
whereas a lot of people want a quick answer, a quick fix,
right? And I mean, we talk about this all the time, right? That we don't do quick fixes.
Right.
We do real fixes.
Right.
We help people change their lifestyle and let their bodies do the fixing. But that can take 90 days minimum.
Right.
Sometimes it can take several months or years. But we do have the flexibility, at least, to say, hey, this is important. We should look at this.
Yeah.
And it might mean that we tell people to eat more kale or eat more seaweed and kelp, depending on what we see. And the potential side effects of those are so minimal that there's very little to lose. So we have a lot of leeway that the average doctor in the medical system does not have.
Yeah.
Now, let's see, where should we go from here? Let's talk about some of the other stuff that can come up with these blood tests, because your example was fairly specific in that. Oh, I did want to mention that even on this most recent blood test, which was almost a year ago, there were some markers for you that were way out of even the normal range that your doctors didn't talk about. Like your lipase was through the roof. And they didn't say, hey, it looks like maybe your body is struggling with fats.
Right.
Let's figure that out, right? And if I remember right, you were experiencing pain in kind of your pancreas region.
It was my gallbladder.
Your gallbladder, which when you put that together with a very high lipase, that paints a pretty convincing picture of, hey, we've got something wrong here.
Yep.
Right. And as far as I know, they knew about your pain. So they really should have taken that marker seriously. Right. That would not be a case where they'd say, hey, I think this is just a lab error. Let's ignore it, because it matched up with your symptoms.
Right.
And that's a lot of what we do with these functional blood chemistry analyses is we get a history from people so that we know who they are as a person. They're not just a collection of numbers on a paper. And then we overlay your context, your history, what you've been through, what your body has done in the past with these numbers in order to determine which ones are actually relevant and which ones are actually maybe just the system getting a little bit confused. And we do that all the time, which is why I don't just get these numbers, put them into a computer and then shoot a report out to people and say, okay, here's your thing. Good luck with it. Yeah, good luck.
It's hard to interpret it.
We've had people look at them before they meet with us to talk about it, and it's overwhelming.
Right.
And to be frank, it's very terrifying because you see this and it says, hey, there's an 88% chance that you've got a liver dysfunction.
Right.
And you're going, oh my gosh, am I going to die? Is my liver failing on me?
Should I check into the ER right now?
Yeah. Or it'll say something like, hey, your vitamin deficiency is 100%. And you're going, oh my gosh. Am I starving myself to death? So
we have only had one blood work. Actually, this is not a funny story, but only one person where we're like, you need to go to the ER right now and get a blood transfusion.
Yeah, we have had that happen.
That's only happened once.
And when we see that kind of a thing, we don't mess around with it.
We're like, you need a doctor.
We don't pretend that we can do emergency medicine. That would be disastrous for everybody. So yeah, that has happened. Most of the time though, what we're seeing is that people who have had stuff going on for a long, long time without any understanding of why, where it's coming from or what to do about it. They've tried all the tests in the world. And I'm not kidding. Like we've got people who have spent thousands of dollars on really expensive, fancy tests to get their genes analyzed and to get their stools and their urine samples done. And they have nothing to show for it in terms of practical information.
Right.
Because no one can
put it together. No one can piece it together.
There's no one doing the sleuth work that it requires. And that's really what it is. It's detective agency stuff. And we have to really do a dive into a person's life to make sense of these things.
Exactly.
But when
guys, we are not doctors. We're patient advocates. We help you piece the things together. I want to make that extremely clear in case there's any government agency listening right now.
But if you do still have questions, feel free to send an email to Tristan@provohealth.com and ask me, are you a doctor? And I will be more than happy to respond.
Absolutely not.
No, and neither is Juanique.
But because we're patient advocates, you guys, like we just want to help you make sense of what is happening. And these systems that we use make it so crystal clear for us to explain that to you so that you can understand and be an expert at your body once again and not feel like you are stuck inside this vessel that is doing its own bizarre thing.
90% of the time, when we get these blood analyses back, we start going through the markers and seeing what's happening. We find that there are some very foundational lifestyle changes, some nutritional changes that we can make that are going to potentially make a substantial difference for people. And this always surprises me too, because once again, a lot of these people have been searching for answers for years, yet they've never been given this very basic foundational information on how to heal themselves through their food, right?
Yep.
And
because this is what happens is a doctor will say, or a naturopath or whoever, and they'll be like, take all these supplements. And you guys, sometimes supplements are just not going to cut it. Because if there is a foundational lifestyle issue that is aggravating this and you are exposing yourself to that day in and day out, a handful of supplements is going to be like just throwing sand in the ocean.
If you haven't heard our vitamin episode, what was it, like number 2?
No, it was the healing pyramid.
Oh, that one too. But I'm talking about the vitamin one specifically. I
think that was like episode 5 or something.
It was one of the early ones. Go listen to that because that will tell you how a lot of times these vitamins are not that different from medications.
No.
They're isolated, they're fractionated, they are concentrated, and then we throw them into your system and hope that we don't set off a bad chain reaction. Right. And that's why, yes, so that the healing pyramid episode is also a really important one because that's where we talk about how you need to start with the basics, with the food.
With
your body knows how to utilize food.
So let me ask you listeners this right now. When you've gone to a doctor or a functional medical doctor or a naturopath, whatever, and you did a bunch of testing, and then you sat down and you had your report of findings with them, did they recommend nutritional modalities to help you heal, or did they sell you supplements? Because hopefully if they are a really good, like holistic practitioner, they understand that you have to heal the foundation first, which is nutrition. If you, like I said earlier, if you are like micro poisoning yourself every day with food that you don't recognize is aggravating your system, and then you're just throwing a bunch of supplements at it, you're just going to be like a dog chasing your tail. You're just going to go around in circles. And so hopefully when you sit down with your practitioner, they're making holistic lifestyle recommendations for you, starting with the basics, which is your nutrition, starting with the building blocks.
Your nutrition is a non-negotiable. The supplements are negotiable. They really are. We recommend a lot of supplements, right?
Yeah.
It is pretty common for people to come away from a consultation with us and decide they want to do some supplements. But that is their choice, and it is because they want to get to their goals faster.
Right.
But what we never, ever, ever skimp on is the nutritional information.
Exactly.
Telling them, here is what to eat. Here are the foods that your body is asking for. And that's important. That's very, very important, because if you are considering working with us at any point, we were asked recently, who is not your audience? Like, who are you not speaking to when you guys do your podcast, when you are working in the clinic? I can tell you without any hesitation that if you are not interested in looking at your nutrition and trying to get that as good as possible, then we probably aren't going to be a good fit. Because we are not going to be okay with just trying to make up for a poor diet with a whole bunch of expensive supplements.
Right.
And speaking of, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, because I was going to say, that's just not a long-term solution. Right. It's not.
No, it might get the numbers where you want them to be, but that is not going to translate to feeling better. Right. And that actually happens all the time, where people will take like these super doses of vitamins, and their numbers on the blood test shoot up, but their bodies aren't using those vitamins in the same way that they would be using a whole food source. Right. And so they aren't getting the actual benefits from it. Right. Or at least not the ones that they're really looking for.
Exactly.
So one of the, let's maybe talk about some of the benefits of this. I mean, hopefully it's pretty clear that the primary benefit is getting an understanding of yourself and what your body is asking for. Right. But there's a lot more that goes into this, and there are a lot more benefits you can get. One of the biggest one being that even though it can be an expensive process up front, you could actually end up saving yourself a ton of money.
Thousands.
Like, we mentioned.
So a lot of people are always like, oh, is this going to cost me like $1,500? And we're like, no, like this will probably be one of the cheapest blood like things you will ever do on the face of the planet. Should we talk about pricing real fast?
Well, I mean, we can. I don't necessarily want this to be about our functional blood chemistry analysis, because there are people all over the country that do this and do an excellent job of it. And, some people prefer a face-to-face, more intimate contact, right? We do a lot of these over the phone on a video chat type thing. Right. But, that's not necessarily for everyone. But I can tell you that our prices are probably some of the best in the country because we're patient advocates, right? We're not necessarily
charging doctors' fees.
No, we're not. And we don't have the overhead that makes that necessary. Right. But for us, if you were to do our full panel that we like, which is fairly comprehensive, it's not every test in the world. There are some people out there that you're going to be looking at like 45 different markers right off the bat. We're not going that insane. But you're looking at about $275 for the blood work, right? And then another $100 for the analysis.
Exactly.
So you're looking at $375, which,
and remember, that's like 12 to 14 vials of blood.
Right.
It's a lot.
Now, we've had people price this out on their own to try to find it cheaper elsewhere. Unless insurance is involved, we're looking at like twice that much money anywhere else.
Someone was quoted $800.
Yeah.
And so, so it's fairly reasonable compared to most places where you get testing.
But even if you assume it's going to be another extra $100-$200, so we'll say worst case scenario, you're paying about $600 for all of this. And then let's say that because you did the testing, you find out that you don't actually need to be taking 5 of the supplements that you're on. Depending on which those supplements are, that could mean that you end up saving yourself, hundreds of dollars over the course of the next year.
Yeah.
And that's not even looking at potential doctor's visits and treatments and whatever other testing stuff could have been done, right? How much would that MRI have cost you, Juanique?
Oh, we have really good insurance.
Well, I guess we did have good insurance, right?
So it would have cost me nothing.
Maybe a bad example.
Yeah.
But
it was military insurance.
But an out-of-pocket MRI can be what, $1,200, I think?
I have no idea.
So it can be a really great way to save money on shooting in the dark or taking the shotgun approach to trying to take everything in the world. And I say that as a huge hypocrite because I've got this giant drawer full of supplements that I take just in case. And I haven't done this on myself. I've never looked at my own blood in this way, which is ridiculous.
I know, that is crazy.
I need to do that.
We probably should just do like a yearly review of ourselves.
I know. I've just been so busy doing everybody else's that there hasn't been time to even look at doing this one.
And you feel pretty good.
And I feel good. So, but still, seriously, I should see what my blood is.
There is a very real component, listeners, that we have a lot of testing anxiety.
Yeah,
like
we do.
when, just with Tristan's history with cancer, looking at any kind of test or x-ray, even just benign, we can't do it. We can't.
I don't even like having people muscle test me.
No,
don't you dare.
Traumatizing.
Stay out of my energy.
It's super traumatizing. And if you have a loved one that has dealt with cancer or you're shaking your head, you're like, yes, I feel you. I know you. I see you.
Yeah.
It's weird. We're happy to test people and look at their stuff day in and day out. But when it comes to our own, we can't do it. I can't even have a chiropractor, like you said, muscle test. It's no, don't tell me about my body. I know my body.
Right.
Don't spring something new on me.
I feel good. Let's just assume I'm good.
Yeah.
So anyway, big sidetrack there. So potentially it can save you a ton of money on those things. Now, it can also prevent you from chasing fads, though. And a really good example of this is the MTHFR gene mutation, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. If you haven't, it's this gene mutation that can affect the way your body methylates. That's a super oversimplification of it. But what happens if you do have one of these gene mutations and it's actually affecting you is that you can get a buildup of inflammation in your body in the form of homocysteine. And it can basically mean that you have emotional and mental disorders. It can mean that you've got all kinds of physical things and increased risk for cancer. I mean, the list of possible things goes on and on and on and on. And this doctor, I can't remember if he was a chiropractor or something else. His name is Dr. Ben Lynch. He was the one that kind of popularized it. And it created this whole flood of people that wanted to buy what are called methylated B vitamins. Because what they found is that in people who have a mutated MTHFR gene that is not functioning properly, they cannot process a lot of B vitamins properly. So if you take a regular B complex that isn't methylated, it could make you even sicker. Right. So all these people, in wanting to deal with their methylation issues, overcome their MTHFR gene mutation and prevent this explosion of symptoms that tends to come with that, they started buying all these methylated B vitamins. And for some of them, that was just the ticket. It did what it was supposed to do. But for a lot of them, they either saw no difference at all, and so they were spending money on these expensive vitamins for nothing, or in some cases, even it made them feel kind of lousy. They were getting headaches and diarrhea and that sort of a thing. Now, the reason why I'm telling that big, long story is that one of the markers that we look at with this blood chemistry analysis, and a pretty common one that a lot of people look at with functional analyses, is homocysteine. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, it's a kind of a key component in this whole methylation cycle that can go awry with the MTHFR mutation. And we can really easily see if not just whether you have that mutation, we're not even necessarily interested in that, but whether you have a mutation that is causing you problems.
Right.
Because when you do have one of these mutations and it is a problematic one, your homocysteine goes through the roof. And we can see that.
Like my blood work.
Juanique's was like that.
We totally
Exactly.
saw that.
And so that then becomes a fairly simple fix. She needs to make sure she's getting her B vitamins from food. And if she wants to go the extra mile, she can do some methylated B vitamins and some other things like TMG, right? But the point being that a lot of people are out there taking tons and tons of these super fancy vitamins. Like they're taking however many grams of magnesium a day, trying to make sure the magnesium levels are up. And you could very easily just go check that and find out if your body seems to have enough or not. Right. So you can really save yourself a lot of money in that sense as well. We've talked about the nutritional protocols. And by the way, I've just got to tell you that it is pretty easy to tell when somebody's nutrition has been very, very off.
It's so easy. Oh my gosh.
It takes about 30 seconds. We just have to find the right page. And it's not because of what the report's saying. It's literally just looking at these lab markers. We go to their cholesterol.
Yeah, their lipid panel.
We look at their lipid panel, their total cholesterol, their triglycerides, their HDL, LDL. And just by looking at really just those 4 things alone can tell us so much about their fats, their carbs.
And then their A1C.
Well, A1C, that tends to show up with the carbs as well.
That's glucose levels over a long period of time.
Yeah, kind of like your 90-day average. But really, even just looking at those 4 things from the lipid panel, we can almost precisely pinpoint which people have been doing a lot of refined carbs or a lot of fruits. But really we can see where you've been. You can't fool us. We can look into your soul with these markers.
Blood doesn't lie.
But what's even better is that we can help somebody make these changes and then test again later, and they can get visual proof. Right? You can get visual proof that what you're doing is making a difference.
Right.
And to me, I think that is the most valuable thing about this testing is that you can know whether what you're doing is working or not.
Yep.
And you can continually optimize until you get to where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it blindly. You don't have to rely just on how you feel. You can have this added dimension of verification, which is incredibly powerful.
Exactly.
Let's see. Anything else that we need to talk about with that?
No, I think, I think that's the basics.
All right. So just to be clear, we can see your thyroid hormones, your sex hormones, a lot of your vitamins, especially the B vitamins, your vitamin C can kind of show up there.
Inflammation markers.
A lot of the
immune
inflammation
system.
markers, your immune. Immune is a huge one. I can't tell you how many people I've looked at their blood and I say, hey, it looks like you've had kind of a chronic illness thing going on for a long time.
Stealth pathogen issues, you guys,
and so we put someone on a stealth pathogen protocol and oh my goodness, it's like the thing that their body needed.
Right.
But we may not have considered that route without seeing what their white blood cells were doing and realizing that, holy cow, there's something that's been going on here for a long time.
Yeah.
We can even see if you're dehydrated, by the way.
Yeah.
That's another one where I love to ask people, so how much water do you drink? And sometimes they'll say, oh, I drink so much water. I'm like, well, that's interesting because everything in your blood work says that you are dehydrated.
Right. Well, sometimes people are drinking way too much water or it's like reverse osmosis water. And so that's a conversation that we can have with them. And it's like, okay, you need to, every time you drink water, you're putting minerals in it. You're not drinking RO water and all that kind of stuff.
So what kind of person should consider doing that? I think that's the next question. Is this something that everybody should do, or are there specific people who would benefit more from it than others?
So honestly, I think everyone, if they had $375 to blow, everyone should get this done yearly.
To blow. It's not to blow. It would be very beneficial to invest.
To invest. There you go. like getting this done yearly just to it's your yearly check-in, you know, like, is my body staying the same? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Like, what do I need to change?
Yeah.
Obviously there are other people as well that need this way more.
So I would say 2 groups that should definitely consider it, and everybody else should consider it, if that makes sense,
Yes.
right? There are 6. These 2 groups are like a 9.5.
Right.
The first group is, yes, if you've had stuff going on for a while and you're not getting clear answers from what you're doing, then you should definitely look into this. And there's usually a good chance that you've already had some of these labs checked, and it's just a matter of getting them looked at with different eyes, right? The other group of people are actually the opposite. The ones who are like the super athletes that they feel great, but they're just always wanting to take it to the next level. You can get yourself to the next level by looking at this stuff, because not only, I don't think we even mentioned this, not only does it tell you where your body is, but it tells you where your body's going.
Yeah.
So we can see several different stages, for instance, of, I don't want to call it diabetes, but sugar dysregulation.
Yeah.
Right. So long before we're even close to the ballpark of the word diabetes, we can see a body that is beginning to struggle with its carbohydrate management.
Yeah.
And it shows up in very subtle ways at first, but they're also very clear telltale signs that, hey, this is something that we need to keep an eye on, because if you keep going down this road, a year from now, this might start to look a little bit uglier.
Yeah.
And 5 years from now can almost guarantee that's not going to be pretty for you, especially if you're already in your 30s or higher.
Yeah.
So this is a fantastic way to prevent future things from coming in and creating problems for you.
Exactly.
But if you're an athlete, and if you're really just a super healthy person, super healthy person,
it's really late, you guys.
so late. And I swear that's a tongue twister. If you're a super healthy person, then this is one of the absolute best ways to kick it up a notch, to put yourself into that elite territory.
Yep.
Just really optimizing.
I think your first category of people, like if you feel like you've been on the medical merry-go-round, you absolutely need to do this. And what I mean by the medical merry-go-round is doctor to doctor to doctor, tons of medications, like you're frustrated. You don't know what to do. You want answers. You're not getting answers. You're just getting more medications. Yeah. Again, we do not take you off medications. We say, okay, you should probably approach your doctor about this and ask him X, Y, and Z, because it's okay to challenge your doctor on some things. It's okay to have them counsel with you.
We don't even have to call it challenging. It's just asking questions, right? When we see a thyroid panel, for instance, that says, hey, your thyroid is like super fired up right now, and we find out that they're on thyroid medication, that's usually a good sign that, like, hey doc, do I need to be on this amount of thyroid medication? Because it seems like it's kind of putting my thyroid over the top, and I'm feeling the symptoms of it in terms of like
anxiety and heart palpitations,
and I'm hungry all the time. And so it can create a conversation that leads to better care.
Yes.
Which is good for you. It's actually really good for your doctor, because they get to give you better care.
Yeah.
And you get better outcomes. So you're more satisfied with their care, and everybody wins. So it really is just a fantastic tool.
Yep. Should we talk about roadblocks that might come along? So lots of times people will come, they'll do the free consult with us. And then we say, let's do your blood work. And there tends to be a roadblock sometimes that we try to warn people is we give them the list of blood work and we say, go to your doctor, and, express what you have expressed to us and see if you can get them to agree to run these labs. Do we want to go into the issues that could show up there?
So just don't be surprised if your doctor gives you pushback. And once again, this is not a criticism of doctors. This is something that I understand very well, that you are in their care and you are coming to them with a list that you did not create. And they're saying, hey, someone told me that we need to check all of these blood markers. And as the doctor responsible for your care, who, by the way, has to justify all of this with the insurance company and their medical board and, any number of people.
And if you listen to our podcast with Dr. John Sanders, who said that doctors can only bill for 2 issues per visit.
Right.
So if you're coming to your doctor with 5 issues, he will not get paid for 3 of them.
Or she.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. And so I got to check myself there sometimes and my sexism.
So doctors have a lot of hoops they have to jump through in order to get the things done that you ask them to do. And a lot of times that is the reason why they are resistant to do everything you ask them to do.
Right.
It's not always because they're arrogant and they just think that you're being silly and listening to Dr. Google. Sometimes they really do want to help you, but they just can't justify it.
They're shackled to the insurance companies.
Exactly.
And so
they're shackled by the system.
There's no way that they will be reimbursed for that.
So it is very common for someone to take our list in and for the doctor to say, I can't really do a lot of this, but here's what I can do. And that's okay. You take what you can get, especially if your insurance is going to pay for it.
Yep.
And then you bring that to us and we can help you fill in the gaps.
Yep. And basically understand it and become an expert at what is happening in your body.
Exactly. Now, that's not our favorite way to do it, obviously, because it's a lot more complicated. But if that is the best way for you to get where you need to be with everything, then that's totally fine.
Yep.
Right. And then you do have that advantage of your doctor's going to take a look at the stuff that they ordered. And then we get to take a look at the stuff and you get multiple opinions on it. So then you, as the patient, get to make the decision that's best for yourself.
Exactly.
And that's ultimately our goal. Right.
Exactly. Yep.
Any other roadblocks?
No, I think that's it.
That's kind of the big one.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's it, you guys. If you have any more questions, where can they find more information?
So currently, probably the best way to do it is if you are interested in this and you want to find out more, not even necessarily about ours, if you just really have questions about functional blood chemistry analyses, then the best thing to do would be schedule a consult with us. Right now, we are doing free consults. They're about 15 minutes, nothing crazy, but it allows us to get to know you a little bit better, allows you to get to know how we do things and decide what would be a good pathway forward for you. Sometimes that pathway does not even involve us. I've talked to people who we end up sending somewhere else entirely because that's what's best for them. But we can give you more information about this and help you decide whether or not it would be the best thing for you and then help you figure out how to get that done in the best way.
Do we have a website for this?
We do.
Provo Health?
So provohealth.com/blood something. Let me look that up. I think it's provohealth.com/blood.
We really should know this.
Well, we had the website redone recently
true.
and it's not blood. So I'm going to add in a shortcut so that it can be, but there it is. Functional blood chemistry analysis. Yeah, it's really long. provohealth.com/functional-blood-chemistry-analysis.
Could we do a short?
Yeah.
Say provohealth.com/blood.
And that will be ready to go by the time you hear this.
Exactly.
And that'll give you a little bit of information. Maybe by the time this episode goes live, we'll have better information up there, but I wouldn't, who knows? I won't hold my breath. And that can tell you a little bit of more information about that. But if you want to do the consult with us, then the fastest way to get there is gutsy.ch/consult. And then you can just choose the 15-minute option and book a time that's convenient for you. And then we can chat more about it and you can decide what will be best for you.
Exactly. If you're local and you want to do that consult in person, please make sure you contact us to let us know. Because when you schedule that online, it goes on the phone consult list and not like the in-person list.
Exactly.
So just make that really clear. And I think that's it, guys.
Yeah.
I hope that was kind of interesting. It's really nice to know that there is a service out there that everyone should be able to utilize, but nobody does or nobody knows about. And that's really unfortunate. And I think that's what I love most about our clinic is that we help make this really simple because everyone deserves to be an expert in their body. Yeah. And so it's tools like these that you can utilize whenever you need to, in order to understand what the heck is going on with your body.
Yeah. And that is the best thing about it is that it's information about yourself and information is empowering.
Exactly.
And we want you to be empowered.
Exactly. Till next time, folks.
Talk to you soon.